This is an interview with Mildred A. Davey, who taught in the Hastings Public Schools from 1928 to 1966. The interview was on January 11th, 1982, and was conducted by Mary Allison.
And she had asked if I would sometime give it for the historical. I said, yes, I would. But I didn't think it was up to me to make it. It was something that they wanted, and she knows about it, and I have
I'll remind her.
And what I have to do is go to school and get the materials.
You said there were several slideshows.
Oh, well, it is. They're all slides, and they were taken from Jane Kingley's material and from Dr. Lang's.
Oh, from Lang's.
Well, they go back, and I just picked out the ones that were relevant and that I thought the kids would be interested in, in the development of the first school and then go on. I think there were 50 slides.
Did it have one of the little schools, the little wooden school across from where Ravensdale comes in?
Mm-hmm.
You know what happened to that building?
That's the thing. That wasn't here when I did.
Well, I've seen I guess it was a Langmuir photograph.
Well, I expect that I've never been sure where those slides, whether Jane had those made from Langmuir photographs. I don't believe Dr. Lang, did he leave a lot of slides? No, these are photographs. Well, then Jane must have said.
But she may have made slides from the photographs.
Yes, I rather believe that's what happened. But, well, why don't we better do that. Then I'll get over there and we'll go over to get carousel out and stuff. I know it's all there because it was supposed to be left there. There's I think they have a copy of my notes. Mm-hmm. And I have a good copy that I would leave. I think it should go to the historical. Well, I'll go over with you. Now, what I'll do, let's get that thing worked out.
All right, because I think the Historical Society would take better care of it than the school would.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, I'm
things
sure.
Tend to get lost.
Well, lost. Look at the things that are gone. It's just,
I know, you told me about that.
It's just for the grace of God that we haven't got those prints back.
Yes, that was very good.
Of course, I just feel very sad about the Fraser portrait because that was very nice.
No.
Absolutely disappeared. But I can't believe that somebody didn't take that. And as I say, you'd find it in somebody's mantle as an ancestor.
That's what happens to things when they get left in school. Because
right.
people who know what they are, once they leave, new people come in, they don't know what it is, it gets thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go back to you. You were born upstate, weren't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Where was it? Syracuse.
Oh, Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to school there?
No, Liverpool, and my family moved.
Oh,
when I was a year old, we moved to Liverpool, New York, the suburb of Syracuse, over on Onondaga Lake.
Oh, I didn't know there was a Liverpool, New York.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
a little village.
Huh.
Beautiful trees, and right on the shores of Onondaga Lake.
It's O-N-E?
No, O-N.
O-N-E-D.
No, O-N-O-N-G-A-G-A.
Okay, I'm not very good speller. You can tell.
That's all right.
So you grew up there?
Yes, I graduated from Liverpool High School, and
then when did you get your teacher training?
I got it at Syracuse, the normal school.
They still called it the normal school?
It goes yes, it was.
What is
the
it now?
It's not in existence. It was, I don't know the exact date, but it's...
most of those normal schools became state universities.
Well,
many of them did.
Syracuse didn't. This, what the plan was, and what we, the students did, we were the substitutes for the city of Syracuse. They had no paid substitutes.
Oh, so that's how you got your teacher training.
Well, we supposedly, yes. When let's see, I worked a year after I was graduated from high school, and then I went into rural school, and I taught 3 years down in Cortland County in a one-room school.
Oh, really?
Right
All
there,
eighth grade, up here around
Portland, New York,
Portland.
outside, over, up at the head of Skaneateles Lake in a little town called, a hamlet called Glen Haven, right at the head of Skaneateles Lake.
Well, now,
And-
isn't Cortland Croton area? Or is there
No,
another?
Cortland, up on now Route 81, between Syracuse and Binghamton.
Oh,
Over in
oh.
over in Cortland County.
You were in the top 3 years in the one-room school.
Yes, and had a marvelous time.
How many kids were there in the class?
Oh,
20 or 30?
maybe possibly 15. All grades though.
I know.
1 through 8. And I lived with the trustee family and 6 youngsters in the family, and I.
Well, I'm interested. I've read about some of those rural schools, and they've used kind of an open education.
Well, what
framework,
happened?
where the kids, the older kids taught the younger
Again,
kids.
First of all, when I was graduating high school, my father died my senior year in high school, and there wasn't, couldn't afford to go to Syracuse University, didn't think I could. And so I worked in a project cook shop in Syracuse for a year, and then I went to Oswego summer school. Oswego, it was their normal school for one summer, and I knew about that there were some vacancies in these rural schools, and I applied and got the job. And then the following summer I went back to Oswego so that I had that. But it was interesting. I did all my teaching the way I had been taught because I had been very fortunate in Liverpool, had marvelous, really excellent elementary school teachers. So I taught math the way Mary Young taught math, and I taught English the way Mrs. Thayer taught it, and geography the way Mrs. Knowlton, and I just used that on my own experience in elementary school. And it was satisfactory. I had a lot of fun. And this school was quite new, and it was 2 rooms. It was a big classroom, and then adjoining was a marvelous library because the state librarian had summer camp there at the head of the lake. See, that was a resort. It was a summer resort. All around the head of the lake were nice camps, and people came in from outside. And so she had taken an interest in and when they built the schools, that they had to have a library. So there was 3,000 volumes in this library.
For a little rural
And
school.
a little rural school. The schoolroom itself had the old-fashioned pot-bellied stove, and we took care of our fire in the winter and cooked our lunches. The kids would bring vegetables and a soup bone from home, and we'd have a big kettle of soup. And that was the beginning of rural schools having hot lunches. And it was easy because they could do it. The girls would prepare the vegetables, and the parent mother would send a soup bone, and
Somebody bring a loaf of bread.
And we did that during the cold weather. Now, it didn't do it when it was early in the spring because wasn't necessary. But it was important in this winter because the winters were very cold down there.
They were.
We were snowed in for longer than a week. The snow was exactly 3 feet deep, and that was the way we walked to school, and it was really winter, so that was fun to have this. Well, there were 2 very bright youngsters in that 8th grade class. Jimmy Hudson, who was always a smart in field class, and Grace Redfield. And her father was Justice of the Peace, and his parents had come there originally and had a summer camp, and he married a local girl and had become a farmer and just lived with the family, yes. So these youngsters, no one from that, I think I'm right, none of the youngsters who finished the 8th grade had gone on to high school. And I was determined that Jimmy Hudson and Grace were going up to Scott, which was right up at the top of the hill, near home. It was on the road to Homer and then up to Cortland. So I just kept after them, and I made them stay every night after school and read. I had the key, of course, the library, and I guess I practically stuffed 3,000 books down their throat. But they went on to high school, and Jimmy was very good in science, so he got a chemistry award. And I don't know what happened to him. I believe he didn't go on to college. I believe that he went to work with some chemical company, because I had gone with DuPont. Grace went into nursing training in Cortland Hospital, and eventually went on to Syracuse University, and she was head of the Visiting Nurse Association in Syracuse.
Well, that's a real success story.
And then the twins, the Morris twins, they were from the family I lived with. They went on to Scott in high school and went to Cortland. One went to the hospital in nursing training, the other went to Cortland normal school and taught. And little Wilma, who was then about the 4th or 5th grade, she got enthusiastic, very bright, and she went on to Scott High School and went on to normal school and was graduated. So it sort of got the little community more interested in education. It wasn't that they weren't, but nobody pushed them. You just have to help them. We had loads of fun, though, and take them out down in the marsh and looking for pollywogs and doing all things like that. And it was a wonderful opportunity for nature study.
And they enjoyed it.
Yes, they did.
You were there 3 years, and then you decided to go on?
Well, then I went back. Then I decided that I would. And by that time, Mrs. Knowlton, who was in my 6th grade teacher, was teaching at Syracuse Normal, and she lived in the village where I lived at school, and she wanted me to go there. And I did, and I lived with a family who took care of youngsters after school, and stayed with a family in Syracuse while I was there in normal school. But the interesting part was I got very little education because I never was in school. You see, I was 3 years older than most of the girls coming into the normal school. Mm-hmm. I had experience. And every morning I go into Mrs. Chandler's office, who was our critic, and Mildred, will you go to Clinton School? Will you go up to Montgomery? Will you go? And they sent me to all of the top schools in the city. So and it was the beginning of the exodus of the blacks from coming up in truckloads and being deposited in Syracuse. Uh-huh. And I would go into some classrooms, and the one that I'll never forget, one of the teachers had a broken leg, and they sent me up there all the time that woman was in the hospital. And
so you were really substituting?
I was a substitute because I could get along with the youngsters, you see. I could discipline, and these girls right out of 17, 18-year-old girls, they couldn't handle those tough situations. One of the funniest things we had Mr. Golden was a very proper gentleman. Always, I don't know where he got the rosebud, summer and winter, always had a rosebud in his buttonhole. And he introduced me to the class. Now, good boys and girls, this is something to this day. You're going to be ladies and gentlemen, I know. And there's one morning, he went through that ritual, and he went out the door, this black gal, she was probably just about 16 in 6th grade. Most of these schools then were 6th grade, up through 6th grade, because the junior high school began in 7, 8, and 9. That was most of the junior high schools were 3 years, 7, 8, 9. And she just looked him out and she said, who the hell wants to be a lady? Of course, my answer was, Teresa, sit down and be still. I don't want to hear another word out of you. And I can still see that same growth. He was 16, he'd never been to school in the South, and he was huge, enormous, and he couldn't sit in the seat, and he must have been so uncomfortable, and he didn't want to learn. He didn't want to read. He didn't want to learn to read. And I would get the young kids involved in other work, and I said, Stan, come on, let's have a little reading lesson. Oh, Miss, I don't want to read. I just want to sleep, and that was all. But that was very good for me. It was a very good experience.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, do you think you taught them something?
Yeah, I probably taught them something. You mean when I was substituting?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I think, well, of course, with
Well, of
broken
course,
leg,
I
you were
both-
probably with those kids a month
I
or so.
was there, oh yes, I was there a month, but I would go for a week at a time, and they'd send me to really many of the very difficult schools in the city. And then some of I always liked substitute in my own district, Salem High, which was up in the very nice section of Syracuse, and I loved going there because the kids were, they were receptive, you know, and of course I knew quite a few others in the neighborhood where I lived with the Browns. But then I came down and I came here in January, or I didn't want to, I had an appointment in Syracuse. The president of the Board of Education was a neighbor of the Browns where I lived, and she came over one day and she said, no, Mr. Golden wants you up at Montgomery School. And I said, no, I don't want to go to Montgomery School. Oh, she said, he thinks you want to leave this man who wanted everybody to be ladies. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen. And I really didn't want to go up there, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay in Syracuse. And I had a temporary appointment in Binghamton, New York. I had been there, had been interviewed by Dr. Kelly, and I was practically promised a position when I finished. Yeah, I finished in the middle of the year because they gave me credit for my summer schools and and my teaching experience in those 3 years. And I guess I'll go to the Empire State Teachers Agency, and I was waiting for a streetcar to go back home where I was living with the Browns, and so I just went over to the Empire State Teachers Agency and walked in. She said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I thought perhaps I would register with you, and that there might be some position available." "What can you teach? Elementary school?" I said, "Yes, that's what I would like." And elementary school. "Sign this." And I said, "What is this?" She said, "Well, just sign it, just sign it. It's an application, but you can fill it in and sign it." And she said, "I have a superintendent of schools come in here. The 6:15, but I want you to talk to him." And I said, "Well, where is he from?" She said, "Well, he's from down in the Hudson." Well, about then, in walked Dr. Hopkins, John L. Hopkins, who was the superintendent of schools. And so he was very gracious, and he said, "You want to teach elementary school? Are you ready to teach it? What experience do you have?" And I said, "Well, now I'm teaching the 6th grade," and I was teaching the 6th grade up at Kennedy School where we had our headquarters were. And I had 3 years in a rural school. Well, we don't consider rural school as being an experience for us. And I said, "Well, I don't know what you put on your own initiative, and you have to work harder than you would in a one-room school with all 8 grades." Right. She said, "I started with a rural school in Oliver and Dundee, way over in Washington." So then he said, "Well, I'll tell you why we need a teacher. We're dividing our 6th grade." He said, "We've got 2 6th grades, and they're both too large, too many children. And this was the beginning, like then, in 1928, of compartmentalizing and how do I want to express this so that it's dividing the youngsters into high and low groups. Yes, and they hadn't done this, and everybody had been together through the 6th grade, through elementary school, and you had high and low ability in all grades. They were just now they decided that they would have the upper group, the more capable, and they would have a group there, and then a middle group and the low ability group. Well, I said, well, then he would give me the low ability group, and he said, well, yeah, but they're, and I said, well, what would the average IQ be? Around 90? Oh, yes, I think so. Oh, yes, I think so. So he said, well, I have to go to a dinner, and it's almost 6 o'clock, and I'll give you the job. You can have the job. $1,400 a year. And I said, no, I don't want to go down to Hastings-on-Hudson. I really don't. I have a partial agreement with Dr. Kelly in Binghamton, and I think I'd rather go to Binghamton. Oh, if Dan Kelly were here, he said, he'd say, you take it or leave it. Now, he said, I know Dan Kelly, and he said, you better come with us, $1,400. And this Miss Underdog, who ran this Empire Case Agency, student, I mean, incidentally, Dr. Hopkins was deaf. He wore an instrument, you know, and he couldn't hear her. He was like, you better come, poking me in the back. And that annoyed me no end. So he said, well, I'll tell you, I'll give you $1,450. And I said, well, really, Dr. Hopkins, I'd rather not go. Oh, he said, you don't know the advantage. Why, you can go to New York for 33 cents. 33 cents? Well, 33 cents one way it was. That was the car fare, or the New York Central. And he said, wonderful opportunity. You can go to New York every weekend, and he said you can go on to New York University if you want to continue. And right at that time, Dr. Myers came in, and he was the principal of the high school. And he came in to get Dr. Hopkins and take him to the dinner that they were going to see. It was an annual convention up in Syracuse. They always met there. And Dr. Hopkins always went upstate to get his thesis. Every teacher here in his school system at that time came from up somewhere upstate, almost entirely. And he went out and interviewed them, you know, and he just combed the...
Was that because he'd come from that area himself?
Well, yes, but he felt that he got people who were... Well, it was his way of saving his school. He believed that he got the best results. So then Dr. Myers said, I think, Miss Davey, you'd like it. He said, I'm from Vernon, New York. He said, I'm an upstate. And he said, my wife is. And he said, we like it. We really enjoy it very much. And he said, I think he's not getting very much. Well, I don't know this office, but I'd like to think about it. And I'll give you $1,500. Miss Anna, she was dying about it. Why don't you take it? And he said, well, I'll give you $1,550 and I'll pay your agency fees. And it was quite that's done what it was. But you know that. So otherwise, you had to pay your own agency fees over a period of time. So he said, my secretary will send you a contract Monday morning. And so with that, he went out, and I stood there with a job in my hand. And sure enough, the next Tuesday, I got the contract. And then I went home and told Mrs. Brown, and she said, well, no, I think maybe it's a good thing. She said, I think you better do it. It would be wise if you get stuck in the Syracuse system, you'd be here the rest of your life, and don't. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay. So I came down here in February for the second semester.
And had you come ahead of time to see?
No, I just arrived on a Sunday afternoon, and I was met at the Miss Tundy. Alice Tundy was Dr. Hopkins' secretary. She later became one of my closest friends, and still is a very good friend. And she's down in South Carolina, North Carolina. And
you came down by train.
I came down on the train, and she had gotten me a place to live right over on Farragut Avenue, the second from the corner of Mount Hope with the little wall. And so I got off the train in Hastings, of course, and there was this man. He kind of yelled at me, "Are you Mildred Davey?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He put me in his pickup truck. He brought me up to his house. His wife was down. She was a very sweet person, but a little dwarf. So
How do you spell that?
L-I-L-J-E.
I-L-L.
L-I-L.
L-I-L.
J-E.
J-E.
W-A-L. L. Little dwarf. And her father was had a barber shop and a beauty shop down and owned that block right across from the municipal building where the
On the south side?
where you turn to go down the south side, where Jean's beauty shop is there.
Oh.
That was the Stroman block, and they lived there, and he had his shop down. And she, Bertha, was his daughter. And she, and Harry Roosevelt was what is it? I don't know, but anyway, I lived there for the first 6 months. So I had the 6th grade class, and they were, I guess, I don't want to label them because they were wonderful kids, and and some of them are still my friends. In fact, one of them just died this last weekend, and I didn't know him until she was thinking about it. They were slower than average. And I realized the minute that I sat in the classroom what I had, but I didn't bother me. I mean, I was knew how to work with them, and then in the following September, I got the middle group. I got they still continued with their.
Did they track the whole elementary school, or did they begin in the 6th grade?
I don't remember. I think they divided all the classes, and I think that we had usually 3 sections.
Was that through all the grades?
I think, yes, down through this for quite a while. It was the forerunner of your gifted, working with the gifted and the accelerated group.
Uh-huh.
It really was a forerunner of that.
Well, that would have been the period of progressive education, where they were beginning to work with the brightest students.
And working with the lower group to give them more opportunity and to work with them when you...
And you had smaller classes.
Smaller classes, yes, they were.
How large was the class then?
Oh, 25. About 25, I think.
Well, now then, so you were in elementary school
Very
for quite a long
interesting.
time.
No,
No?
I wasn't. No. The principal was Mrs. Bean. I can't put some of this, I don't want to go into.
No,
Well, Mrs. Bean decided that I should live with the school nurse the following year. The school nurse would like to have an apartment, so we found this little bungalow up on Jefferson Avenue and decided that we should live there. Well,
without consulting you?
well, she said, I think you should have a house, you should an apartment, and Florence Lewis wanted somebody to live with, and I think it was very nice. Well, I was gullible, and we got the house, and I had furniture sent down from upstate. And that summer, Florence Lewis, picked up a boarder for us to live with us up from upstate. So we had a furnace in that house, and there was a lot of work to be done, cooking for the boarder at Florence, and the ashes had to be taken out every Monday, get them out for the Christian. And I'll never forget one morning, Dr. Hopkins was always out in front, walking up and down, and he said, "Millie, what is you telling?" I never wanted to be late, but I'd have to hurry like Sim, to get down that hill. And I said, well, I had to take the ashes out. He said, leave the ashes in the basement. Let them pile up. Let somebody else take them out. I said, well, nobody else will take them out. Pretty soon the place will be overrun. They have to come out every morning. And he said, well, you have to get a board then. So he knew what was going on, that I had the burden of the whole thing. So I terminated that. I couldn't...
You just did it for a semester?
Yeah, no, a year. We had it for a year. but it was an imposition, really. It was on her part to leave this. You see, she'd get out and get to school. The school nurse, she'd be there at 8 o'clock, and never take out the responsibility of the breakfast or the breakfast dishes or the ashes or anything, you know. Well, anyway, that was a experience. Well, but Mississippi I wasn't happy with her at the principal either, but and then at that time, Dr. Myers and Elizabeth Smith, who was the high school teacher, decided, well, I was very interested in all of this, and I went to the basketball and really enjoyed it. And they wanted a high school in the junior high school, the Stockton High School. And so I told them, Mildred, this is Dr. Hudson. I told her that we had a job in high school for you, you feel better. Yes, I'll feel much better. I was in school for but I went over to high school, so I had 2.5 years. You won't believe it, but the second year was the fall. September, when I came back, John Washington was one of the students. John Washington was how homework. Say, John, Washington, Dutchdorfer, I mean, all of them. Oh, it was a wonderful place. The class I got in the fall was really just wonderful. How do you spell his name? W-A-T? W-A-T-E-R-O-U-S. Why? You know John.
I know who he is. I never knew his name.
Yeah.
So then did you start the gardens department?
I started doing group counseling with the 7th and 8th graders.
Group counseling.
And I taught English and social studies.
Now, what was group counseling?
Well, I take their whole class and work. You have a regular program or whatever. Oh, social conduct and study habits and
That kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
And when did you get into the career counseling?
Well, after, in high school, when I went in from junior high school.
How long were you in the junior high?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, I
all
mean,
this.
it was approximately.
No, well,
12 years. Well, a good long time, I guess.
well, I got my count. I started in an NYU immediately the first fall, and I went Saturdays and evenings. And I got my degree in 37, and I got the same year I got my guidance certificate, and it was one of the first ones in the state.
Oh, really?
It was number 47, as a matter of fact.
Was that from NYU?
From the state.
From the state?
From the State Department. You get your guidance certificate from the
Do you have to take the exam for that? Or do you just
No,
need
you
a certain number of courses?
meet the requirements of, in the counseling courses that you take it.
Is that comparable to an MA?
No. I got a bachelor's degree. And, but to apply for your certificate, now it's different now, but at that time, that's the way, I think now the requirements, I think we had master's degree required.
So then when you went to senior
Well,
high,
then
that's
I
when you-
gradually, I picked up the sophomore, I did the freshman, then I did all the freshman counseling. And freshman counseling at that time was mostly social activity, social guidance, and program planning and getting them set for their remaining high school. Then junior high school was grade 7, 8, and 9. And then that was getting them their program set up for the next 3 years. And
Whether
individual
they
counseling.
would take a college
Academic
course
or vocational or what, yeah. And then I picked up the sophomores and finally I did girls counseling and sophomore and junior classes. Then finally, after 1960, I did the girls and did the junior girls. But
Well, now that was that, then that's when you got into the career counseling.
well, you do, counseling is overall, you do whatever there is to do, and it can be career counseling, it can be educational counseling and career counseling. Oh, and incidentally, for 19, and Kevin, then Dr. Myers and Gordon Smith and I did a textbook.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about that. You showed it to me once, but now give me the exact title again.
Everyday occupation. And that came out in 1940. And then we revised it.
Now, let's see, your co-authors was Elizabeth Smith.
Elizabeth Smith, who was the high school dean, and Dr. Theodore Myers, who was the high school principal.
But were you the principal author?
No.
That's M-Y-E-R-S?
M-Y-E-R-S. He was the principal who came in when John
Yeah.
was introduced.
So you were all equal authors?
Yes, but Dr. Myers died in 1939, and the work wasn't finished, so Betty and I went on and finished it, and we had to revise and rewrite. He wanted, well, the editor wasn't pleased with it. It was a little too children, so we rewrote it for the level of high school. It was much better. It took us a long time. You know, what we were working, it takes a lot. Plus, we did the tracing around, you know.
You did the picture research, too, didn't
Oh,
you?
yes.
Well, that was a lot of work.
Oh, it was a lot of work.
And I hope you earned some money from it.
Very little.
Really?
You know, well, it was only what, 10%? Well, it was
Probably.
divided among three. We divided our third because Mildred was, you know, we felt it.
Yeah.
Mildred should get head here. Mildred was the kid. And then, of course, as other people came into the department and did group counseling, they didn't do. See, I had done a lot of this career counseling in the 7th and 8th grades with kids, and we had regular classes in occupations. I taught occupations as a class in the 9th grade, and used the textbook and other material, and we had a lot of material. And that was a good foundation for youngsters to begin to think about careers. Yes. And then as other people came into the department, they dropped it. Cy Gruber is an aside, the present director, guidance up there. Frank's place. Dr. Adams became the head of the department after Betty Smith retired. And he was marvelous. He was just well-trained, and he had taught in the science department. And he really was a fine person to work with, and I realized when he died that summer that I didn't want to come back. I had worked with him so long, and I thought, I guess I'll get out of this. But this, Lady Gruber said not too long ago that they've never had any work. Careers have never been taught in the school. There was never any attempt to give any education.
They've forgotten all you've done.
By the wayside.
Yeah. When did you leave?
1966, I retired.
Now, at what point did you move down to Warburton Avenue?
Oh,
nice
at
little
Pearl
apartment
Harbor.
down there.
I went down there the January after Pearl Harbor.
1942. You've been living at the Farragut House until then?
No, I lived up in South Drive. Oh, I had an apartment up in a private house on South Drive with another teacher. Taught chemistry. And there, the Campbell house. I lived with the Campbell family, really, and later on, the people bought that house. I didn't remember when it was having young people.
No, not to my knowledge.
Well, they got the transfer to Seattle and tried to send it coming back. But
So you lived in many places in the village.
Oh, yes. I lived down in Farragut House. I lived up when Betty and I were writing the book, I lived up in Mount Hope Boulevard for 3 years in a private house, where she had the apartment upstairs, and I forgot that. I had the apartment downstairs. That's when we were writing. That was very convenient.
I was going to say that would be very convenient.
3 years was that I lived up there.
I know I asked you one time about the languages of the children.
Well,
somebody had told me that Miss Pingree had told her that there were 36 languages in the Hastings schools in 1936, and you told me you thought that was an exaggeration.
I think that's an exaggeration because I do know that when I came here, the population of the school was 63% Polish and Russian.
63%. Now, when you say Russian, does that include Ukrainian? And,
yes, that would be all, yes, because you never knew, they just said they were, that they had come from Russia, and they didn't distinguish the provinces or that. But I know that now, since they've grown up, since all these youngsters now, like Sophie Minkiewicz, who's the secretary in the high school, and she was Sophie Chemka. Now, I think they were Ukrainian. I may be wrong, but then I began to realize that they had come from different sections of Russia.
You could tell by their accent?
No, I don't know. No, but as the children grew up, I suppose, and were graduating from high school, and some of them went on to college, I suppose then they went back and found out their background and the areas of Russia they
So they were second generation Americans.
Well, the youngsters we had, most of them were second generation, yeah. And at that time, the parents, the fathers were working in the Anaconda, and also the pavement company, because those blocks that you have, the pavement company, and
Zinder?
Zinder, yes. And also,
So they were these 63% were bilingual then?
well,
I mean, did they talk their native language at home? And
no, you see, that was the thing. We were adamant about their speaking English and learning English and discarding. See, this was just a terrible mistake. But some of the families were sensible about having their children learn Russian or Polish, and especially Russian because they would go down to Saturday. They would go down to Yonkers to the priest in the Russian Orthodox Church and would learn Russian. And during the World War II, we had I don't know how many, but we did have some boys who spoke Russian and were in the army and were promoted and given the job as translators because of their knowledge of Russian. It was very valuable. And I think Betsy Stocker is down here, who works in Riola. You know Betsy. The girl.
I've probably seen her, but I don't know their names.
I know she went to Columbia and took Russian and was fluent in Russian. But you see, and that's what happened all the way along. They were discouraged in continuing their native language. They had English was important, and that was what they had learned. That's why I get so upset about the Hispanics that are nasty about learning English. Every one of these youngsters came along and learned English, and I don't think it was right that we didn't.
Well, the value of having being bilingual.
It did help, yes, but it was important that English was their major language, and they wouldn't have gotten the job that they got, and they got the education that they got if they hadn't been able to speak English and had some darn good English teachers in high school. And they will say it every time we have a reunion. They just are so appreciative of what Sally Jones and Harry Hugg and all the English teachers gave them, and they always emphasize how much it has meant to them. And they're I know some of them say they're opposed to. They feel that they had to learn English, and they think everybody who comes over here, whether they're Hispanic or Irish or Italian or Polish, that English will be their first language if it won't be American. And then all right, continue with the study of your native language. And I think that's right. And not discard it.
Well, it's certainly a valuable thing. I wish I had two languages.
Well, yes, I do too. I think they should learn a foreign language, but I think preferably their own native language would be better. It would be easier for them, and they could. But
did you think they spoke it at home because their parents may not have known English?
Oh yes, I'm sure they spoke. I know they spoke Russian and Polish, but I think it's like I grew up in a village where where a lot of people were German, and they spoke Platt Deutsch. And I think that the same thing is true with the Russian and Polish. There's a vernacular that's not court. Because German is court German and Platt Deutsch.
I see.
In other words, it's like.
What's the vernacular?
Vernacular, yes, it's the same as the 70s and those of New York or Brooklyn or anything. And I think that's probably what happened with the Russian and Polish. It was dialect from whichever section of the country they came from.
Was there any antagonism between them?
I was never aware of it. I guess there was. When I tell you, I really, it would be very hard for me to tell which families were Russian and which were Polish looking back on it. I know that Sophie, that they're Polish, the Kempsers and the Minkiewicz. That, those people, and the Warriors, I suppose they were Russian. But I never
weren't
felt,
aware of
I
any
wasn't
racial
aware,
strife
no,
in
I
school.
don't know, I don't believe so. There was the strike between the village and the manor. See, it was a social strike. And it was pronounced, and it was a very difficult thing, and to this day, there's resentment. It wasn't until the generation that I had when I came here 50 years ago, when they were through high school, they finished high school. There were very few dropouts. You know, we kept gassing these young students, and then we were very determined that they were to go on and get some further education, either in business school or college or whatever they could get. And they will say, and as late as the October reunion, and again, the two reunions were a week apart. And the class of the 26th reunion, what was that? It was in the 56? What?
Yes, I
Yeah,
guess so,
56.
yeah.
And then the 49, 50, 51. Talking with some of those people, those graduates, they still say, you did so much for us. You never made us feel just because we were from the village that we shouldn't go on. And I have had them, and I know it's true. You took a lot of care. You were just as interested in the kids from the village as you were from the kids from the manor. And probably I worked harder with the Polish and Russian and the youngsters who came from the village, you see, than I did with the kids from the manor or from the other sections, because they had other champions. I mean, there were other people on the faculty who pushed them. I don't think they were aware of it, but that was the way it was, and we know it, and they know it. And
Is that resentment still there?
yeah, there's a whole. There must be, because did you happen to see the register, the Enterprise of pictures of the reunion?
Yeah.
All right. Did you see the picture of Walter D'Souza and me?
Yes.
We were dancing.
Yes.
All right. Now Walter D'Souza was hell on wheels in school, and but I never had any problem with him. I mean, I probably scolded him for something at some time or other. But anyway, he said to me, he said, you know, I'm so glad we had this reunion. I'm so glad that you and Mrs. Thoreau and Mr. King, and he said, you were always so good to us kids from the village. And Walter, good to all the kids, I hope, not just from the village, it was from Hastings and the school. He said, yeah, but you cared about it. See, I mean, and now he goes to the other parts of the village with his business. Mm-hmm. See, I mean, he goes now and takes care of the houses and the families that he didn't go to those houses as a friend of their children when he was growing up.
But he does now.
Well, he goes now and takes care of it, and they're tickled to death to have him come as their electrician, because they know he's going to do a good job. But there is that understanding, and I never go to a reunion because somebody doesn't do that, of what you did, that you did a lot for the kids in the village. You cared about us. Well, the other teachers did too. I mean, it doesn't. Sally Jones did an awful lot for the youngsters. The kids. Well, see, I lived down there on Main Street, and I was down there in that neighborhood, and they knew that, and
You saw them in the stores.
I sure, and in the village, they knew their families and went to their families because they'd have them come and put marvelous food, you know, and they go and always making the holidays, the Polish and especially the Polish cookies and all those nice things. But yes, there was a very deep chasm between Anna and the
Bad.
and I'll tell you one thing that broke it down, probably, and that was sports, especially basketball. And Coach Cochran and Coach Lindemann worked very hard, and with their football team too, because some of the very best athletes were from the village.
Mm-hmm. How about with the girls?
Well, with the girls also, we had good athletic teams at that time, and girls basketball was very popular, and they only had a girls team of basketball game before they had before the varsity team, and they went around the county and were often champions, and a lot of those girls were excellent basketball players, because that was what the girls had. There wasn't the diversity that there is now. But you might have noticed in that Enterprise a picture of the football team.
Yeah.
All right. Now that was a cross section of who they were, Rapoli, and go on with the.
Yes, I noticed there
Well,
was a
all
lot
right,
of diversity
yes.
in the name.
Well, that was because the coaches gave them the opportunity, and they were marvelous athletes in both football and basketball, and baseball too, but baseball wasn't quite so popular at that time, and was good. And Coach Cochran did a lot for them, and then Coach Lindemann, he was just wonderful with them. Coach Lindy, they just loved him. So there were.
So you've seen a lot of changes.
Yes.
What would you say were the major ones?
You mean in the school?
Yeah.
Or in the village?
Well, let's say the
Of course,
school
one
first.
of the things that happened, I started to say, as they were graduating from high school and they did go on to business school, they got good jobs, they left the community, or if they were married, they left the Warburton Avenue section. They have their houses now. They are homeowners in different parts of the community. They live all over the community now, and they bought houses, and they are taxpayers, and they're interested in the school because it was their school, and they want their youngsters to have as good an opportunity as they had. And I know that for that, so that as they moved out into the community and left the area, it changed their attitude. You see, they became neighbors of some of the people whom they had felt were socially above them. Now, a lot of them have stayed right in the Warburton Avenue. Several of them own 3 or 4 or 5 of those houses, you see, that are now had apartments in them.
What are the changes you've seen in the school?
I don't like to talk about the changes in the school because I feel that I am, after 50 years, I am thinking back to the early years when this school was built up till it had the reputation of being one of the best schools in the state. It was ranked as one of the top schools.
Really?
And not only in Westchester County, but in the North State. And the teachers were dedicated.
What time would that have been?
Well, it goes on from 1925 until 1925 to 1955, a 30-year period there, when Dr. Hopkins retired in 1950. But
I don't want to say
no, I can't tell you. One of the things that, to me, is very hard to accept, it's just, and I know that I shouldn't say it, and you're not going to recording.
I am recording, but I'll turn it off.
Well,
Go on. You want me to turn it off?
Well, I don't, what I want to say is I know to me what has happened in the school. As soon as it became, because I don't want to get involved with it. Glad that we did go because
To Ellis Island.
To Ellis Island before it was closed because it was a.
Well, I bet that meant a lot to them.
Well, it meant a lot to them because their parents had come into Ellis Island.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it wasn't active, but they saw the classrooms and and it was all explained to them. If they were immigration procedures, and I say if they were ill, if they were held over, as the isolation, if they came in with any possibility of smallpox or any disease, and then of course they had to have somebody had to vouch for them when they came, and they might be out of that. But so that I was always so glad that we did that, Ellis Island, and I always took them every year, the junior district back in the usually ninth grade.
What were some of the other places you went?
Oh, you always, take them into the theater. Oh, I did a lot, well, wait a minute now, a lot of those, we always had Playland. I always took our kids to Playland for picnics. And another thing that we did, which now that we were always, and they look back on it with great joy, the Yonkers Ferry was running to Alpine, and we always had our big ninth grade. Oh, yes. And then Alan Thomas was the superintendent of grade school, and he would send the grade school buses up and take all the kids, and we'd take the whole ninth grade, you see, 120 kids, and go over and cook our supper over there and have fires and things, and then come back on the ferry. And we'd have treasure hunts. A group would go ahead and do a treasure hunt for them. The kids, over there on the other side of them. And that was I was so sorry that ferry was discontinued because that was a wonderful place to visit. Really, it was a beautiful spot. And